Hey, what's up guys? Matt here coming to you from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about a topic that I feel like is trending online, social media. Everyone's talking about it on the forums and whatnot. And that topic is the price of Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and more specifically, the increasing cost of Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And really, people are pointing their fingers at two camps. The first camp is the motor company itself. People are saying, yeah, Harley-Davidson keeps increasing its prices. And I'll just cut to the chase, guys. Yes, Harley-Davidson has increased their prices just like pretty much every other company in the world right now. But more specifics on that in a minute. And the other camp that people are pointing their fingers at are the Harley-Davidson dealerships. So kind of two separate arguments that are pretty much arguing the same thing, and that is that the price of Harley-Davidson motorcycles are going up. So I'm going to touch on these two topics. The first one being Harley-Davidson Motor Company, and do they keep increasing the price? What is causing that? Is it corporate greed? Is it in fact inflation that they're experiencing? And just in the spirit of full transparency, my family has owned and operated a Harley-Davidson dealership in Los Angeles County for 65 years, and I currently work there, and so I do work at a dealership, and so take that for what it's worth. Also, if you guys want to see a deep dive that Nick and I did, that's like a podcast format deep dive into the pricing of Harley-Davidson, I think we did it about 2 years ago. I'm going to link that video in the top right hand corner of this video as well. Nick kind of jumps into like a more of like an economics deep dive into the Harley-Davidson pricing, and I think it's probably pretty good and it'll open a lot of people's eyes. But first off, I want to say I totally understand people's standpoint and their frustration with prices going up. At the end of the day, I think it's important for people to be able to enjoy Harley-Davidson motorcycles and not feel like they have to take out a second mortgage on their house to afford one. It's supposed to be something fun, not something that makes you stressed out. But at the same time, Harley-Davidson's got to run a viable business that is profitable so they can continue to work there, make the products that we all love, continue to innovate, make new stuff, and so they do have to run a profit. And I think most people understand that. But let's first take the perspective of looking at things from the motor company's standpoint. And guys, this is just kind of my anecdotal take on everything. I'm not really doing any deep dive research into financials or anything. This is just what I've seen as a dealership and things that have affected the pricing pretty dramatically in the last few years. So let me take you guys back to about April of 2020. That was pretty much when the pandemic started getting real big and hitting and really affecting businesses and shutdowns and people's jobs and things like that. The first thing that I saw was that people were spending a lot more time at home and they had extra free time, and in some form or fashion they were getting extra money in the way of like stimulus checks and things like that from the government. And so there was a period there in like the second half of 2020 and in 2021 where people had extra money and extra time. And what do people do with extra money and extra time? Well, they go buy toys and go enjoy those toys. And so for dealerships, and I think all of the motorsports industry, we saw this unexpected effect of the pandemic where people were buying a lot more recreational vehicles. And so the demand was way up during this period of time. And I don't think anybody, including Harley-Davidson Motor Company, foresaw what was going to happen. I mean, how could you really plan for something like as unexpected as the pandemic was going to be? How do you plan for that? And so they didn't have enough inventory to fulfill this crazy increased demand and influx of cash flow into the power sports. And I really think just the entire like automotive industry as a whole just saw a higher demand during the pandemic years. And so keep that in mind. That's going to play a part in the dealerships and the pricing at dealerships and added dealer markup and things that people are complaining about right now. But what also happened during this pandemic was there was major catastrophic effects to the supply chain, and that was globally. That was all the car companies, Harley-Davidson, of course. And so what was happening is you had this huge increase in demand, and then around like 2021, where all the supply chain issues were coming to an effect, and I would say that really affected us in 21 and 22. We're just now starting to get a little bit past a lot of the supply chain issues, although not completely out of it. We still have a ton of back orders and things like that. But with the supply chain issues, we also saw significant inflation as well. So Harley-Davidson and again, even car manufacturers and everybody were having these inflationary effects on producing their products. And so this leads me to the first thing that I saw that really bumped the prices significantly in the Harley-Davidson world. And that is Harley-Davidson's hard decision that they had to implement to put into effect a surcharge on all of the motorcycles. So the surcharge was a charge that they put into effect to offset the increased cost of raw materials to produce the Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Now, because they had to implement it mid-model year, they didn't change the MSRP. They just put the surcharge on there, which it would just show up as an additional like line item or fee on top of line 1, on top of the MSRP when you bought the bike, much like freight is on the Harley-Davidson motorcycles as well. So this was a hard cost of Harley-Davidson Motor Company. It's a hard cost of the dealerships. The surcharge is still in effect today. I don't know what's going to happen with that. All I can say is that it was intended to be a temporary charge, at least until the supply chain issues normalized a little bit. I think now we're on year 3 of it, and it doesn't look like anything is normalizing. In fact, the surcharge has crept up a little bit from the first year it was implemented. And so eventually I think the surcharge will probably get absorbed by MSRP. I don't know when that's going to happen. But anyways, long story short, the surcharge was something that Harley-Davidson implemented as a necessity when inflation pretty much hit every industry pretty quickly there during the pandemic. I mean, yesterday when I went to Chipotle, I paid $19 for lunch. And so it's not just Harley-Davidson. You go to the grocery store right now, eggs are up, milk is up, everything is up right now. And in my opinion, Harley-Davidson is just doing what every other company is doing, and they got to basically offset inflation, and they got to do what they got to do to stay in business and be financially viable and make the margins they need to make to operate. And the comments that I do see a lot that do kind of make me sad are the ones that say, wow, now Harley-Davidsons will just be a rich man's motorcycle. It's no longer the blue collar worker's motorcycle. And that's a tough comment, because anybody that loves and has a passion for Harley-Davidson, I want to see them on a bike, obviously. But at the same time, you know, Harley-Davidson does make a premium product. Their bikes are highly sought after, and the community around them has a lot of pride of ownership in owning Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And the only way you get that way is to have a very high standard of fit and finish and build quality and materials. And that stuff is never cheap. And for a lot of the commenters that say that, wow, there's just a lot of corporate greed going on, I would say, you know what, Harley-Davidson is a publicly traded company, and you can look at their investors' portfolios and you can see exactly what money they're making where. And I think if you took a close look at it, I think the numbers reflect that they're just doing what they got to do to stay a viable business so they can continue to stay around longer than the 120 years they've been in business. So let's look at the other camp, or the other source of what people are pointing their finger at in terms of how prices are increasing dramatically on Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And that is at the dealerships. A lot of people are claiming that dealerships have all these exorbitant fees, added dealer markup, hidden fees, prep charges, things like that are marking the bikes up even further over MSRP. And so I'm going to say that yes, that is true in a lot of circumstances. There are a lot of dealerships out there that have added dealer markup, have additional fees and things like that. And I'll just start off by saying that I support the ability for dealerships to have freedom in their pricing. And that may be lowering the price below MSRP and increasing the price over MSRP. So I do support that freedom, and I think that dealerships should have that freedom. But that being said, let me get into it a little bit more. So what happened during the pandemic was, like I said earlier, we saw a big shortage in supply of the bikes. There are supply chain issues in Harley-Davidson and a lot of manufacturers in the world. I know Ford Motor Company, all the auto manufacturers were having a big problem with just getting the product out to dealerships and out to the lot. So with less supply, less inventory at the dealerships, well, now all of a sudden they had to make more profit per unit. And so what we saw dealers doing was putting added dealer markup on their bikes. And so really it just turns into a classic supply and demand issue. And so you had the surcharge coming from the factory. You had their incremental price increases every year, which have never been really dramatic, but every year, you know, the prices do go up a little bit. You did have the big significant bump of surcharge during the pandemic. And then on top of that, you had dealerships that had lower inventory, and so they were trying to make ends meet by having this added dealer markup on top of the price of MSRP. So that's what's been going on, and in a lot of cases that's kind of what the justification is for dealerships adding markup to their bikes. I personally don't believe in an arbitrary added dealer markup. You get nothing extra for your money when you pay above and beyond MSRP. That's just me personally, and I'm not trying to be self-righteous here. I think if everybody needs to make more money, I think the right way to do it is for the motor company to increase MSRP, give themselves more money, and allow for the dealerships to make a greater margin on the bikes as well. That way it's done in full transparency. I just believe in being transparent. People know what they're going to pay before they get to the dealership. They know they're going to get a pretty uniform pricing at most dealerships. But again, I support dealerships having the freedom to raise and lower prices as they see fit for their individual businesses. And so I don't fault dealerships for adding markup on their bikes at all. So let's shift gears just a little bit. Once in a while, I get these people reaching out to me saying, yeah, Matt, prices are crazy. My local dealer, the price is just outrageous. That's why I'm calling you from, the East Coast. And when I have these conversations with people, a lot of times people will end up buying from their local dealer, which I support, by the way. I'll get more into that in a minute. A lot of times they'll say something like, yeah, Matt, I went to my local dealer. They had a $5,000 markup on a Road Glide special, and I had to go back and forth with them. I went to the dealership. It took 3 or 4 hours of my time. I had to haggle back and forth. And then they took $3,000 off. I said no. It was like this huge drawn out negotiation. And then ultimately they gave me MSRP, and I ended up spending MSRP for the bike, and I bought it. And to me, that discussion just seems a little bit crazy, because why would you buy from a dealership that puts you through so much duress and so much heartache and trauma to buy a motorcycle? Why would you end up giving them your business? I think the important thing for people to remember is if you ever give a dealership that you don't like their business practices your business, all you're doing is perpetuating that behavior. So if you go to a dealership that has a huge markup that you don't agree with, maybe you do agree with it and you think it's fine, you pay it, great, more power to you. But if you go there and you don't agree with the price they're giving you, and you don't agree with their negotiation style, the way they handle the transaction, then go to a different dealership. It's just crazy to me, these people that end up buying bikes from dealerships that they had a horrible experience at. The way you stop dealerships giving you a bad experience is stop giving them your money. Sorry guys, this is just kind of a little bit of a rant I have, just because I get these messages almost daily where people complain to me about their local dealership and having a bad experience, and in the same breath they tell me they bought from those dealerships. And I know a lot of people may argue that, okay, well, I live in a rural area where the next closest dealer to me is 100 miles away. Okay, I get it. You may have an excuse at that point, but if you live in Phoenix or New York area or Chicago, or you live in Dallas, these big metropolitan areas, and this is happening, then don't give them your business. Go to a different dealership. And with this all being said, I will say too that I do think that having a good relationship with your local dealer is very underrated. What I mean by that is, if you're a long-term Harley guy and you're in it for life, I would highly recommend having a good relationship with your local dealership. I have customers that have been customers of mine for, my family for 35, 40 years. And I will do anything for these people when they come in and they need help. Like I always make sure they are happy every single time they step foot into our dealership. People that have bought 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 bikes plus from me over the years, guess what? I recognize them. I know them. I'm taking care of them. They're happy every single time they step foot in the dealership. So if you have the attitude that every dealership is a crook and you just want to try to beat the dealership every time you go in and buy a bike, you're going to end up just not having a good dealership experience ever with that mentality. And I would say, you know what? Give dealerships the benefit of the doubt the first time you walk in there and try to do business with them. They want to make you happy. They're all trained to make you happy. But if you don't agree with their business practices, their service department, their negotiating, their pricing on bikes, you don't agree with it, don't buy from them. For you to go back and forth with dealerships for a month on the price and just hate every second of it and then end up giving them your money and buying the bike from them, that's just about the worst thing you can do. But if you can find a dealership that you do like, then stick with them. If you're loyal to the dealership, then the dealership is going to be loyal to you. It's funny how that works, right? So anyways, guys, I thought I would just explain a little bit what's been going on with the industry and the pricing. Again, I just see a lot of comments about it. Again, this is kind of my quick and dirty anecdotal approach to just everything. I explained the motor company. I explained the pandemic. Really, the pandemic just changed a lot of things in the industry and really the world as a whole. So everybody is experiencing the inflationary effects of their businesses right now. But I think the extra layer that we see on top of that is just the dealerships and the lower inventory. And Harley-Davidson is making less bikes right now. If you go back to like 2016 or something like that, we had bikes coming out of our eyeballs. And so guess what? Dealerships have a lot higher urgency to move the inventory, to make room for more inventory. And so they're cutting more deals. They're trying harder to earn your business. Those days are over. So you're not going to see the real big, deep discounting that we've seen in some years of Harley-Davidson in the past. And I'll end with just saying that not every dealership is a bad guy. A lot of people just want to slam the dealerships online, and some dealerships deserve it, I'm sure. But this video isn't about me pointing fingers at dealerships. I feel like dealerships can run run their business how they want to run it, price their bikes how they want to price them. I support the freedom to price bikes how they want and they see fit. But ultimately, you as the customers, you have the ultimate choice, and you really dictate who stays in business. If a dealer is a bad dealer and their pricing is unfair, their negotiation and business tactics are unfair, and if people stop doing business with them, they're not going to be able to continue to do business the way they're doing business. But anyways, guys, hopefully this clears up a little bit of the pricing and what's been going on and why prices have been increasing lately. Let me know if you've bought a bike in the last 3 years and you feel like you got a good value for your money, and let me know the opposite as well. Let me know if you aren't buying a bike right now because you feel like they're too overpriced, or maybe you feel like you just can't find a dealer that gives you a fair price anymore. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Later.